Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm talking about a film that's actually a parody of Nicolas Cage's acting career. It's called The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. So I apologize for the long title. It's a long title for a movie. But it is called The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Some of the marketing campaigns are just calling it Massive Talent just to make it easier on them. But in this film, you guys, like I said, it is a parody of Nicolas Cage's career. It very much features a fictionalized version of Nicolas Cage playing himself. He's basically within the story of the movie. He's basically struggling to find work. Not a lot of directors and writers want to work with him anymore. He's kind of just this washed out actor that's not finding any work anymore. But he kind of feels like he's making a comeback when he gets invited to this party that's over in, I think, Spain somewhere, and he meets a character that's played by Pedro Pascal of Mandalorian fame. He voices the Mandalorian in that show. And basically, him and this Pedro Pascal character bond over the course of him being over on this island that this guy lives on. And like I said, he's throwing this huge party, and you find out he's this big Nicolas Cage fan, and you find out like him and his dad bonded over the film Guarding Tess, which is a film that Nicolas Cage once starred in, and he has National Treasure posters and um, props from Nicolas Cage movies and Nicolas Cage pillows and just all this stuff that clearly shows that he's a huge fan of Nicolas Cage and his work. Throughout the course of this film, he's bothering Nicolas Cage to read this screenplay that he wants him to read and that he wants him to act in. And he really wants him to do it when he finds out that Nicolas Cage is kind of considering retiring from acting since he's not really finding work in Los Angeles anymore. And also over the course of this film, and this is something I'll probably talk about later in the review, of course, but Nicolas Cage is kind of asked by the CIA to kind of investigate this guy. There's a potential arms deal that's going wrong that this Pedro Pascal character might be in charge of. And so over the course of this film, Nicolas Cage has to investigate his home and see what his activities are, see who his connections are, and see if this guy really is this bad arms dealer that the CIA is framing him to be. And so over the course of this film, Nicolas Cage has to kind of figure out what to do with his life, do with this guy on the island. Is he really going to be in the screenplay? Is he really going to retire from acting? And is this whole mission with the CIA going to kind of end his life? What's the CIA mission going to do to him? So basically, over the course of this film, Nicolas Cage had some big decisions for himself. But overall, guys, I thought this film was okay. The thing with The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is I think the concept for this film is really fun. It clearly is inspired by other Nicolas Cage films that kind of do this kind of thing already. When he was in the film Adaptation, which is actually probably my favorite Nicolas Cage movie, it's very much aware of itself. He plays a real-life screenwriter, Charlie Kaufman, in that movie. So there's kind of already flavors of things that he's already done within this movie. Some of the action scenes definitely reminded me of some of the other action films he's done over the course of his career. So there's things that this film gets right. It's very aware of itself in all the right ways. But there's some things about it, like a subplot involving the CIA, that unfortunately doesn't completely work for me. It kind of deviates from the film that they're trying to make when the CIA stuff really starts to kick into high gear. There's things about this film that I love, don't get me wrong, but there's also things about this film that kind of rub me the wrong way. And by the end of the film, I kind of looked at the friend that I saw at the screening with this for the movie, and kind of looked at him, but it's like, this is kind of okay. Like, I don't know if I completely loved everything I just watched. So overall, I'm for my positives and negatives of The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. I think the biggest positive I can give this movie is Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal and their bromance in this movie. These two guys clearly bond over the film. They have great screen chemistry. They're really funny on screen together. Without spoiling anything, there is a scene where they take drugs together, and you kind of see the after effects of them taking the drugs and things like that. So their bromance was perfect in this film. I kind of just wish we had a whole film with the two of them just doing silly stuff together, because I think that definitely would have made up for all the bad stuff that happened over the course of this film that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But their bromance was absolutely genius in this movie. I thought the meta humor regarding Nicolas Cage's career was also very good in this movie. There's just a lot of moments where they poke fun at some of his bad films. They poke fun at some of his good films. They poke fun at him doing his own stunts and like Gone in 60 Seconds and things like that. There's a lot of meta humor throughout this movie that really works very well. And if you know anything about Nicolas Cage's acting career, I think you're going to find a lot of fun little Easter eggs over the course of this film. The first half of the film I think is also very strong. The whole thing of Nicolas Cage not finding work, him kind of having this dark side to himself that he's talking to as if he's talking to another person and things like that. Him having a drinking problem, him having a financial problem. Um, the scenes that very much poke fun at his career are very much in the first half of this movie. There's an agent that he has that I'm going to get to in another positive that is also a lot of fun, played by Neil Patrick Harris. So just the first half of the film is really strong. I really enjoyed myself in the first half of the film. The first half of the film is really kind of the film I was hoping this film was going to be, and then once you know the CIA stuff kicks in, and like I kind of was checked out of the movie by that point. And like I said a second ago, Nicolas Cage has like a younger double of himself in this movie that's just really fun to watch. Definitely very much in the spirit of like a face-off version of Nicolas Cage back when he was in that movie. Whenever his double shows up in the film, it's a lot of fun. There's even a line that's constantly repeated that his double says to him that it's just kind of really funny whenever it's brought up. So when his younger double shows up in the movie, it's a lot of fun to be had. And like I said, Nicolas Cage has an agent in this movie that's played by Neil Patrick Harris. I really like this character quite a bit. Whenever he shows up, it was really funny. There's just things that he's asking Nicolas Cage to do to kind of further his career that really add to the humor and really kind of add to the fun of this movie. So whenever the Neil Patrick Harris agent shows up and gives him advice and tries to make him feel better about certain things, it's just, I really enjoyed the two's screen chemistry, just like I did with him and Pedro Pascal. The two really worked off of each other really well in this movie. But for my negatives of the unbearable weight of massive talent, the second half of this film really drags. There's a really very much a slower pacing to the movie by the time the second half kicks in. That's when we really start to get into the CIA stuff that I really didn't like. The second half of the film is just a real drag to get through, unfortunately. I also don't like how this film feels like three films going on at once. There's a film where Nicolas Cage is kind of finding out more about himself as he's being washed out. There's a film where he's working for the CIA. And there's a film where he's bonding with this guy overseas on this island. And unfortunately, the three just don't mesh well with each other at the end of the day. They're just kind of little afterthoughts of one another. They just kind of explore a little bit of each plot. They really didn't decide, unfortunately, at the get-go, what exactly the film identity was going to be. So for me personally, I like to see one film, one story, not three stories meshed into one. I don't think that really works for a story like this, especially when you're trying to make a parody film about Nicolas Cage's career and the ups and the downs that he's had over the course of the years. So three films at once, not really into that. Really wish they just could have chose one story, one that didn't involve the CIA, one that have him and Pedro Pascal, of course, bonding, but make it mesh well with the story that's already taking place. It really felt like three films at once, and I really just had a hard time getting into the film as a result. And like I mentioned before, the subplot with the CIA really didn't feel necessary. There's actually two characters in that subplot that really just kind of don't go anywhere. They just kind of give Nicolas Cage advice, and there just comes a time in the film where they just kind of disappear and don't really do anything to the plot anymore. There's even a kidnapped girl at one point in this movie that, when you kind of get to see her do something on screen for once, it doesn't pay off. The whole thing, just setting it up right away with her getting kidnapped, and once we see the kind of the payoff and the reward of them rescuing her, doesn't really pay off, unfortunately. So there's just a lot of stuff that happens that with this subplot, I think, that really kind of take over the film a little too much and kind of mess with the film a little too much as a result too. And overall, there's just some characters here that are really pointless. Like I said, the two FBI agent people thing that worked for the CIA, I really didn't care for them. The girl that gets kidnapped really has nothing to do in this movie, unfortunately. There's just a lot of characters that are thrown in there, like Demi Moore has a cameo at one point, that really just don't do anything. They don't really do anything to the plot. They don't do anything for the film. And some of them don't really even have a good joke to tell when they show up in this comedy movie. And so some of the characters here are just kind of there to be there, and that's the end of that. So I also thought this film just should have been more fun. I mean, you have such a fun concept. You're spoofing Nicolas Cage's career, both the goods and the bads that he's had. him having Oscar potential at certain times in his career, and him at one point kind of taking any script that came his way while he was running into financial trouble. There's just a lot of fun you could have with that, and it's just one of those things where I wish they kind of had a screenplay here that just had more fun with that. Didn't do the whole CIA thing. Didn't do three stories at once. Just focused on one. I think I just would have had more fun as a viewer if they decided to go that route in this movie. And at the end of the day, too, by the time you reach the end credits, too, unfortunately, this film doesn't really have a point. It lacks a point. I don't know if the film is trying to tell us that Nicolas Cage's career is doomed. I don't know if the film is trying to tell us that Nicolas Cage has several good films left before he retires for good. I don't know if the film is trying to tell us that working for the CIA changes your life. I don't know. It's just there's just so many things that the film doesn't wrap up and doesn't make its point very well. So I thought the film really needed a point here. Are you trying to spoof the man? Are you trying to make fun of this man? What are you trying to do? But overall, I'm going to give The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent a 7.5 out of 10. I think there's things that are really good about this movie, like the bromance of Cage and Pascal, the meta humor, the first half of the film, Nicolas Cage's younger double, and Nicolas Cage's agent played by Neil Patrick Harris. But the second half really drags. It really does feel like three films going on at once, and it just needed to be one story. The CIA subplot really takes over the film in all the wrong ways. I really would have preferred more characters here that don't feel so pointless, that really kind of added to the film in some way, and some of these characters really don't do that. The film should have been more fun than it was, and the film really lacks a point. It really doesn't have any kind of a punchline by the time the film is over with. So I'm going to give this film a 7.5 out of 10. I think it would make a good rental. I think if you like Nicolas Cage's films, specifically his better films, I think you'll have fun with it as a rental. I don't know if I could send you to the theater to see this one. So 7.5 out of 10 for me. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is an okay film.